In the heart of Moscow, time is not a straight line, it is a circle. To understand the man who sits in the Kremlin today, you must first understand the ghosts that haunt its corridors. For centuries, the Russian leader was not just a politician. He was a Vazd, a supreme leader, a secular god. The Tsars believed their power was gifted by the divine. But when the Romanovs fell in 1918, the mysticism didn't die. It simply changed its uniform. Nikolai II had Rasputin, a mystic who promised healing but brought rot. Today, observers point to the political technologists who surround the modern Kremlin. The crown is gone, but the sacred Russian myth remains. Putin doesn't just rule a country, he protects a 1,000-year-old idea. Power in Russia has always been measured by the depth of its prisons. The Gulag was not just a prison system. It was Stalin's slavery economy. While the world remembers the horrors of the Nazi camps, the Gulag lasted decades longer. Hitler and Stalin both reached for the same tool. April 30th, 1945, Berlin is a graveyard of brick and ash. Inside the fur bunker, Hitler prepares for his final act. Stalin was obsessed with Hitler's body. He kept the secret of Hitler's charred remains hidden for years, fueling rumors of escape. By constantly invoking the denazification of enemies, the modern Russian state uses the ghost of 1945 to justify the iron grip of today. Is Putin a new Tsar or a 21st century Stalin? He uses the vertical of power, the suppression of dissent, and the cult of the strong man. Stalin ruled through a closed door and a firing squad. Putin rules through a television screen and a complex web of oligarchs. July 1918, a basement in Yekaterinburg, the Romanovs are erased. When the Bolsheviks pulled the triggers, they created a power vacuum. Today, as Putin sits in the revitalized St. Andrew's Hall, the throne room of the Tsars, we ask, did the revolution ever actually happen? The Kremlin is once again shrouded in mysticism. Men speak of destiny and spiritual wars, rehabilitating the image of Ivan the Terrible. The culture of the camp, the idea that the state can disappear anyone at any time, is the foundation of the modern security state. April 29, 1945, while the world burns, Hitler marries Eva Braun. This is the Gerd Meering, the twilight of the gods. Stalin let rumors fly. He told Truman he believed Hitler was alive. But in secret vaults lay the truth, fragments of a skull. Stalin was a man of steel. Putin is a man of mirrors. You don't need a gulag if you can control the mind through a smartphone. The Z appearing overnight in 22 to represented ... What? It is a floating signifier, meaning whatever the state needs it to mean. Stalin turned the Moscow metro into a subterranean cathedral. A leader who controls the symbols you see every morning controls your subconscious. The Homo Sovieticus is a person trained to think one thing, say another, and do a third. This survival mechanism is the bridge to today. The story of the Tsar, the dictator, and the president is a single book. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. The crown is heavy, the bunker is cold, and history is a judge who never sleeps. In the West, we often mistake silence for consent. In Russia, silence is a survival strategy inherited from the communal apartments of the 1930s. Walls were thin and the NKVD was always listening. This is the internal exile. When the modern citizen turns off the news or scrolls past a political arrest, they aren't being ignorant, they are being traditional. Under the Tsars, the peasant looked to the ground to avoid the master's eye. Under Stalin, the worker looked to the machine to avoid suspicion. The medium changes, but the posture remains the same, the protective crouch of a soul trying to remain invisible to a state that demands everything. We talk about the fall of the Berlin Wall as a conclusion. But in the Kremlin, 1991 wasn't a conclusion, it was a tactical retreat. The Chekist spirit, the ideology of the secret police, did not vanish, it went into the private sector. They traded their wool coats for Italian silk and their dossiers for spreadsheets, but the objective remained the same: vigilance. To these men, the collapse of the USSR was a catastrophe because the state lost its shape. If you look closely at the modern Russian bureaucracy, you see the ghost of the Tsar's civil service and Stalin's Politburo shaking hands. To the Tsar, the border was a moving target. To Stalin, it was a buffer of bone and steel. The modern Kremlin views its neighbors not as sovereign nations, but as lost provinces or sacrificial zones. By framing every modern conflict as a sequel to the Great Patriotic War, the state turns a geopolitical land grab into a holy struggle. It is a narrative loop that prevents the country from ever actually reaching the future because it is forever relitigating a victory from 80 years ago. The Tsar thought his lineage would last 1,000 years. It ended in a cellar. Stalin thought his new man would conquer the stars. His empire rotted from the head down. The modern tragedy is the belief that a single man can hold back the tide of time. Absolute power is a drug. As the man of mirrors looks into the glass, he sees the shadows of Nikolai, Joseph, and Ivan watching from the corners. Russia is a country where the unpredictable past is always being rewritten to justify an uncertain future. Even Stalin couldn't stop the poems of Akhmatova from being memorized and passed through the bars of the Gulag. The crown is a heavy burden, and the bunker is a lonely grave. In the Kremlin, information is a weapon of mass destruction. To understand the Russian state, you must understand Maskirovka, the art of the mask. Today, the digital mask is even more sophisticated. We see a leader who is simultaneously a man of the people and an untouchable deity. To the Russian mind, the land is not something you own, it is something you defend. This is why the loss of Soviet territories felt like an amputation. The soil is soaked in the blood of 20 million souls from 1945. That blood gives the state a permanent moral credit. Totalitarianism needs love the love of the martyr. Russia worships the beauty of suffering. Every 40 to 50 years, the Russian state harvests its best and brightest. This is a biological pruning of dissent. Today, they are labeled foreign agents and forced into exile. If you cut the tallest flowers for a century, eventually the garden only grows grass. The Kremlin uses Western social media to undermine democracy. It is a mirror game. The state doesn't need to kill the truth, it just needs to make the truth exhausting. To keep a fortress, you need a siege. If there is no enemy at the gates, the people might look at the man in the tower. Walk through Moscow. The buildings are too big. This is dictator chic. It is designed to make the human body feel like an ant. When the leader is the state, the death of the leader is the death of the state. Transitions of power are always violent and secret. The Vazd thinks he is writing history, but history is actually writing his epitaph. In the Kremlin, war is a cleansing of the soul. There is a term called podvig, a heroic feat of self-sacrifice. Beneath the glass skyscrapers lie the bunkers of the Cold War. Russia is a necropolis state. The dead have more votes than the living. The most terrifying sound in Russian history is the Great Silence. It is the silence of millions who disappeared. The bunker is not just a physical space. It is a psychological fortress. It is incapable of trust or empathy. History is a circle, but also a spiral. Each time we come back, the stakes are higher. The crown is now made of nuclear codes. The modern state is conducting a mass experiment in childhood nationalization, building a human wall to protect the bunker. In the deep woods, there stands a cathedral the color of military khaki. This is the nuclear orthodoxy. The immortal regiment march, the weaponization of grief. It turns the nation into a funeral procession. He has built a system so perfect that he can never leave it. If he steps down, he dies. If he stays, he rots. But there is a crack in every wall. The alternative to the modern state is the one thing they cannot predict, the spontaneous human. The story of the Kremlin is stone and steel, but the story of Russia is people. The fever will break, the mirrors will shatter. The clock is ticking in the heart of the Kremlin, and for the first time in 1,000 years, it is counting down to 0.